First proposed in 1785, but opposed by other canal companies who didn't want a shorter, more direct competitor to the Severn, the Worcester and Birmingham Canal began its 29-mile journey from Gas Street Basin in 1792. By 1796, connections had been made with the Dudley No. 2 and Stratford canals, and Tardy Big Old Wharf was reached in 1807. After being refinanced, the canal descended through the UK's longest lock flight and reached Diglis Basin where, on December 4, 1815, a local innkeeper steered the first boat to its moorings. The first part of our walk to Birmingham takes us from Diglis Basin to Hanbury Junction near Droitwich, where you can venture along the Droitwich Junction Canal. We'll start from where two river barge locks connect Diglis Basin to the River Severn. Diglis means of the church, as its land once owned by the cathedral's monastery, and was chosen as it's one of the more navigable parts of an unpredictable river. Although this lock cottage still survives, apartments have now replaced most of the wharves and warehouses, and thankfully the adjacent chemical manure works. There was so much trade, including manufactured goods and coal from Birmingham and the Black Country, chocolate crumb making the opposite journey to Cadbury's, soap rock arriving from Cornwall for the porcelain factories, and locally sourced salt, the second basin was added in 1820, and a steam engine was employed to pump river water into the basin to keep the locks replenished. Go under Mill Street Bridge and you'll reach the redeveloped Royal Worcester Porcelain Works, which used canal transport up until 1961. The works closed in 2009, but there's now a museum that you can visit on 7th Street. The commandery is located by Sidbury Bridge and Lock. Founded as a hospital in 1085, it was used by Royalist forces during the Battle of Worcester in September 1651, when Roundhead militia stormed into the town. This was the Civil War's final battle and resulted in a victory for Cromwell, with King Charles forced to flee to France. You can still hear the cathedral bells at Blockhouse Lock, where there was once stabling for sick canal horses. Nearby was Hardy and Padmore's Iron Foundry, where they produced signage, lampposts and street furniture of all kinds for all over the world. But most of the city's industrial heritage has now disappeared. Further on, this is the desolate site of the Vulcan Iron Works. And this is what remains of the former gasworks. The eye-catching Oculus Bridge was built in 1860 to carry the Worcester to Hereford Railway across the canal and road. The round hole reduced the weight of the bridge and ensured the arch's structural integrity. The bridge appeared on this 1994 stamp. Next to the bridge is Lowesmoor Basin, which was originally planned as the canal's main goods transshipment terminal. Diglis, however, prevailed and the once busy wharves have been redeveloped, although it is still used by a boat company. Arboretum with St Mary's Spire in the background is a residential district with old-fashioned values and allotments on the far side of the canal. Once a substantial pleasure ground known for its chestnut trees, this area of neatly laid out streets was developed during the 1800s. large expanse of open space still exists near the Royal Grammar School's cricket pitch, and various public artworks begin to decorate the canal and its surroundings. Bridge 12 is nearest to Worcester City's old ground, and here the club's greatest victory is celebrated, a famous cup win against 2nd Division Liverpool. However, no more will play be held up while the ball is fished out of the canal, as the ground is now a housing estate. Competition fishermen line the bank and some residents fully embrace the canal, and warm weather. At Gregory's Mill top lock, you'll come across one of the mileposts that usefully indicate how far you have to go to reach Birmingham. You pass Purdyswell Park and its golf course, formerly RAF Worcester, where fighter and bomber pilots were trained during the war, and near to which film star Clark Gable crash-landed in 1942, blocking a nearby road. We're not in the country yet. There's yet more industry to come, with large industrial units on both sides, partially hidden by hedging on the towpath side. Modern industry has no use for the canal, but until 1974 Cadbury's had a factory here producing marzipan and cakes. Teledyne Lock 10, the sound of cathedral bells has been replaced by traffic noise from the A449. Industry finally bows out at Bridge 22A as we leave the city of Worcester. But the traffic racket only gets worse by Lock 15 and Offerton Top Lock, from where you can see the M5. And then you reach the peaceful Tiverton visitor moorings, where the sound of the motorway is only a distant hum. There's a newly planted orchard where you can rest on a bench decorated by apples and pears. But just when you thought you were in for a quiet life, the canal bumps into the railway, not once, but twice. The 15th century Oddingley Church stands in an elevated position near the canal. Its picturesque location belies the fact that it was also a crime scene in 1806. The new vicar had insisted on increasing church tithes paid by local farmers, and one of them hired a hitman who dispatched a vicar but subsequently disappeared, murdered by one of the farmer's cronies and buried in a barn. The circumstances only came to light in 1830, by which time the ringleader was dead and no one could be charged with murder. There are further peaceful moorings at Dunhamstead, with its hidden away boatyard. After taking care not to get injured by falling render from nearby bridges, you enter a cut to the 230-yard Dunhamstead Tunnel. And there's no towpath, so you have to find your own way to the other end. At the northeast portal, wooden steps help you avoid a landslip. If you're an Archers listener, you'll feel at home in this rural swathe of Worcestershire countryside. Past the pretty village of Shernal Green, and onto Hanbury Wharf and Junction. The Eagle and Sun sits above Hanbury Junction on the Saltway, a Roman road that runs from Droitwich across neighbouring Warwickshire. And it's from Hanbury Junction that the Droitwich Junction Canal was cut to join with the Barge Canal. Both canals relied on the salt industry, a natural resource that locally is 10 times saltier than seawater and has been exploited here since the Iron Age. However, by 1939, the Junction Canal and the Barge Canal, built by Brynley to the River Severn and opened in 1771, had been abandoned. Fortunately, both have now been restored as part of the Mid-Worcestershire Ring. Between Lock 3 and the staircase locks 4 and 5, the 238 berth Droitwich Spa Marina arrived in 2012. At Lock 7, the Junction Canal joins the River Solwar, which eventually joins the Barge Canal. But for part 2 of the walk, we'll return to Hanbury Junction and continue to Tardybig along the Worcester and Birmingham, a walk which will include the famous Tardybig flight of 30 locks.
It's a great time for taking photographs, isn't it, when the vision is clear.
Check out my other walks along the Oxford and Stratford canals, Grand Union Canal and Birmingham Canal navigations. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again soon on another towpath.